Hi, everyone. Jim McCann here. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, my guest is Venk Varadan, who's the co-founder and CEO of Nanowear. It's a company that creates a monitor that looks at your heart, pulmonary functions, 8 different medical functions in a comfortable, easy-to-wear piece of material that measures all those functions, not just at a moment, but all day long, downloads it into an app, up to the cloud, and now your clinician can have real data that's developed over a long period of time, very comfortably, inexpensively, inobtrusively. It's an amazing story, but the backstory is not just a product, it's the family behind it. It's Venk and his mission, his career change from Wall Street to wearable nanotechnology. He's a really interesting and engaging guy, and I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation we had. A very interesting guy I met last month up at a conference put on by Worth Media Group. A conference was called Living Well, and I met a fellow named Venk Varadan. And Venk, I loved your story, and so I won't give too much more away in the introduction. It'll come out as we have our chat here. But you're a very interesting guy and interesting background and career, and now the business you're in I find to be really interesting. And you introduced me to a fellow you thought I'd get along with, Dr. Spiros Theodora, and I had occasion to catch up with him yesterday, and you were right. He is terrific. I so enjoyed our conversation, and we'll be sure to connect in person soon. He's in Greece now, but when he comes back through New York, we'll surely get together. But he's very involved in your business too, so let's get into it. Venk, where did you grow up? I know you live in Brooklyn now. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, grew up in State College, Pennsylvania, the big college town in the center of the state between Pittsburgh and Philly, kind of in the middle of nowhere, but the college town where Penn State University is. My parents were both professors in engineering there for the better part of almost 3 decades, and still live in the same house that me and my siblings grew up in. So we lived about a mile away from campus, and my whole family is a Penn State family. My father, who we'll talk about, I'm sure, that was the first State College, Pennsylvania was the first place he landed in the USA in 1969. And so he later then met my mother after he got his degree in Chicago. And then they were both kind of in the same field, a little bit variance, but then they sort of traveled the East Coast with associate professor roles. And then in the early 80s, they got their tenure track positions at Penn State. And that was kind of homecoming for my dad.
So after Duke, what happens?
So at Duke, I studied chemistry and biomedical engineering, and I thought for the longest time I would go to medical school. I think that's kind of ingrained in first-generation Indian families where we don't really think about business as a career choice. We think of law school, med school, be a professor. That was kind of just the path. And so I naturally kind of fell in love just from our upbringing and just my own persona with math, physics, and chemistry. And so I was very good at that, very interested in the space, and just assumed I would go to med school after college. I was one of those kids that kind of didn't think about time and that college would kind of last forever. And so I went, did the whole MCAT, did the lab, research, publications, really preparing myself for med school. And then about a week before graduation, decided that I hadn't got the opportunity to see the world yet. I wasn't able to go abroad in college due to my major restrictions that wouldn't transfer over from abroad institutions. And I was already saddled with a good amount of debt at an expensive school.
And your parents are really happy about you not going to Penn State, where it would have been very inexpensive.
It was very fun. That was a very, very good discussion in high school about, well, you'll get paid to go to Penn State Honors because they get the discount as a faculty member, and then you get the 50% scholarship. And so my parents were like, we'll buy you a car with that money if you want. And
no, I want to run up some debt.
When you're young, and I think this also, caters to the, yourself as an entrepreneur. I mean, you don't think about the long-term effects of decisions you make. You believe you're making the right decision, and you don't get scared by things like debt, right? Obviously, when you're 17 years old, you don't really know much about anything at the time, but right. And so, that was an interesting discussion. But in deciding on whether to go to med school or not, Was going to go in Philadelphia, and so not far from home, but called up the school and told them, I'm going to defer for a year, and decided to go to the Caribbean, to the Haiti and Dominican Republic, the island of Hispaniola, with a program funded by the American Red Cross. And we did sort of village infrastructure work and baby vaccinations. So before a gap year was a thing, I kind of took one before I sort of realized what I wanted to do. And, I think, Jim, like I was totally thinking that it was going to motivate me to, number one, that was one of the best experiences I ever had in my life. Kind of living in villages for the better part of a year. But I thought it would totally motivate me to come back and really, want to be a physician. And it kind of did the opposite. It kind of steered me into industry. I realized that the impact you can have, even if you're a really successful physician and researcher and you're publishing and all that, but the impact you have is really only within the patients that you see and treat, whereas industry can have a more broader impact. And so I started my career in the pharmaceutical industry here in New York. Started with Eli Lilly, and then same role in Sanofi Pharmaceuticals. I'll never forget my first interview with Eli Lilly. I was planning on going into laboratory research because that's what my skills were. I had published papers. I thought I'd be sort of the producer of drugs and therapeutic products that would go through clinical research. And I'll never forget the first manager. She had said, look, you'd be great at this, but have you ever thought about marketing or sales or anything like that? Your science, and you're very extroverted, and you're very type A in that regard. You might be great in more of a corporate function as opposed to a research function. And so that kind of was my segue. So she called up managers on the other side of product marketing, development, and sales. And that's kind of how I landed my first corporate gig here in New York, and wanted to come here because my whole family was here, and twin brother is my best friend, and he was never leaving. And I fell in love with the city almost immediately. We shared a 1-bedroom apartment, a rat hole in Crown Heights, and then in Sunset Park, $500 a month. We were, and I was just saving up money, learning the corporate gig for 3 years. And then after that, I really wanted to formalize my business education because I'd never really taken even in a macroeconomics class or anything like that. So I did end up applying to grad school. It did take out more debt to go to business school here in New York and at Columbia in 2006 to 2008. And I did specialize in corporate finance and entrepreneurship. And with the debt, I kind of fell into, I would say, it interested me, but I fell into the Wall Street sort of investment banking. So technology, M&A, and growth equity at UBS Investment Bank. And that was a very interesting time for 2 reasons. 2008, obviously, the world was Wall Street in particular, but the financial markets were collapsing. And so when I signed my offer at UBS, our group was 33 people. By the time I got to the floor, and by the end of 2008, Lehman Brothers had just collapsed, our group was 11 people. And so many of us were kind of just showing up every day, hoping our chair was there. And many times we just didn't leave. We just stayed overnight and kept working to make sure it was there. But what I mean to say by that is that typically in investment banking, you'll have deal teams of 5 or 6 people and a lot of people in between the partner and the junior associates. And that was all kind of removed for us. So people like us in that time who were able to keep our chairs, we got a lot of experience with very small deal teams and sort of very, I would say, much earlier exposure to the CEOs and the CFOs and the head of BDs of the companies we were serving and advising. So I thought that was a great experience for me. And when the IPO market kind of came back, got the opportunity to lead some IPOs and some M&A discussions. And then later left with one of the partners to Citadel and really started growth equity discussions with earlier stage companies. This was 2010, 2011.
Great
so
time to be at Citadel, huh?
It was an amazing time to be at Citadel. I would tell you that if they didn't spin out our group, I don't know if I'd have ever started a company on my own. But it was all Web 2.0 at that time, Jim. It's like Facebook's valuation was changing every weekend, right? And so everybody who had basically lost their job or had career shifted post 2008, they kind of took their skill set out to Silicon Valley. And that's when the venture capital boom really started, when interest rates were low. And so for me, that's kind of when the entrepreneurial bug really hit me. It was working with these 10-person teams, these 20-person teams, these 50-person teams, seeing what they were building, and then Google would scoop them up for, hundreds of millions of dollars, 2 years later.
Acquihires
And
then, huh?
acquihires, product fit. I mean, some of these weren't even businesses, right? But they were so visionary in what they were trying to accomplish. And then of course there was a lot of fluff too, as were probably not as needed in the world. But I think especially with my background and my heritage as a first gen immigrant family that's quite risk averse. That's why you become a doctor, a lawyer, a professor. I think you don't really realize what it takes to be an entrepreneur until you've kind of met one and seen it. And yes, of course, you have to be smart. You have to have a very, very well organized structure in your head about the space you're entering and the problem you're solving. But it's really about resilience and hard work. And you know that as an entrepreneur, that was the skill that I was really sort of seeing. That was the common denominator across these successful entrepreneurs. And that made me believe that it was possible to do. So that's really where the bug started. And I'm sure we'll get into the origin of Nanowear, but that's the quick background leading.
So how many years on Wall Street? 5?
Almost seven.
Yeah.
Almost 7. So 6 and change.
And then your dad, while he's professoring at State College, he is a scientist, so he's always working on things on the side. And when did he become entrepreneurial himself?
It's interesting. I would say that Dr. Vardhan, my father, he's always been an idea guy, right? And I think that is part and parcel of why he and my mother were such good professors. They started a couple companies, in their past around nanotechnology. The first company they ever started was HVS Technologies. My sister's name is Haima, mine is Venk, and my brother's name is Sai. So it was HVS Technologies. But they were all, just like any professor, they were kind of running it on the side. They weren't like, diving in on that as their sole sort of profession. And so I think it was never really product based and sales based, the companies they were doing. It was really discovery based, which again is the mark of any entrepreneur. You got to come up with a sound idea and sound technology, specifically when it's in the physical sciences, like what we are, or healthcare sciences, as opposed to pure software. So there was kind of always, I think, idea generation in our family and in my blood, but for whatever reason, I was never kind of the idea guy, right? I really like the math and the physics and sort of understand the ideas that my father and my mom would come up with, but I was never generating those on my own. So Dr. Vardhan always had a new idea that he wanted to publish on, and then he would move on to the next idea. He would never sort of build that product, right? And try to get it out.
But now in the house, so to speak, he's got this guy who understands how companies work, understands balance sheets and talent management. And so now you complement his skills with the skills you've learned and developed through your education and through your experience. And so it sounds like a right brain, left brain meeting together.
It really was. And how how Nanowear, our company, got started was literally over the dinner table. I was home. I was home for the holidays over Christmas time, and this would have been 2014. And my thought, wearables were becoming a word.
And nanotech was very popular then.
Yes, nanotech, wearables. And so my father, knowing that I was kind of working with early stage companies, helping them with investment, potentially evaluating investments, things like that, he said, you got to come to the lab tomorrow. I got to show you something. And of course, State College is tiny, so it's 5 minutes to the lab. It was Christmas Eve. We went, and 2 of our now founding engineers were still in the lab at the time. My father was regularly brought grad students on that were from Korea and India. I don't know if that was his purpose to make sure that they weren't going to go home over the holidays and that they would keep working. But these guys, Prashant and Mali, are such good friends. They're family of ours. So they would always, we would have rotations of grad students that would come over to the house for dinner over holidays and stuff. And so they were actually in the lab. And my father took out, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but he started taking his shirt off, which he's just the cutest 5'2" Indian man you've ever seen in your life. So I was just laughing. And he was holding up what looked like just a sham wow piece of cloth, right? And it was hooked up to wires at the time, and it was going to an oscilloscope. And while I was laughing, he was holding the cloth on his chest, and he's like, "Stop looking at me, look at the screen of the oscilloscope." And I was seeing cloth picking up electrical signals from his heart, and I could see the PQRS complex on the screen. And so I was fascinated. And a bunch of ideas were going through my head. And I sort of asked what your plan was, Dr. V, what's your plan with this technology? And it was a very academic answer, right? It was a very professorial answer. It was, well, Prashant's going to publish on this, and Mali's going to write his dissertation on this, and we're going to get out to this journal and this journal. And, my Darth Vader Wall Street brain was kind of like, I think we should commercialize this. We could turn this into a real business. But then there was an altruistic point to it too. It's like, if I'm going to start a company, let's do it with something that can save lives, right? And really bend this cost curve. I don't think I'd really articulated what the business strategy was, where we were going to build a product, but I knew we had something.
You had a potential for a good product. You knew the applications in terms of need assessment, monitoring, could have a huge beneficial effect on an individual's health and on the whole health system.
Absolutely. And while I probably wasn't processing this in the way I'm articulating it now, this was really about access and democratization. If you could we all wear clothing, whether we're rich, we're poor, we're of this demographic or whatever. Cloth is something that is natural to our bodies. And this could really benefit people in their real world who may not have the opportunity to see a primary care doctor, let alone a cardiologist, either due to access or simply just due to time and proximity. I mean, there's many millions of Americans that live, more than 50 miles away from the closest cardiologist.
So now, at that stage, this cloth, what do you call it then?
We call it cloth nanotechnology.
So you have this cloth, the size of about a handkerchief that you held up. How does it affix to the chest?
The reason the cloth is so important is if you feel it or touch it, for your viewers, it'll feel velvety or suede-like underneath your fingers. And that's you feeling billions of vertically standing sensors per centimeter of surface area, hence the nano sensor moniker. And we can get into how this was decades of work in defense-related applications that led Dr. Varadan and our founding engineers to this invention. But when we first started thinking about what the product would look like, I was very romantic with the idea of clothing and like underwear. And so the first product iteration was actually a tank top for men and a bra for women. And it was just doing electrocardiographs. So we would take some of these clovers you can see on the handkerchief side, and the clovers themselves would be sort of die cut out. So the sensor is really only as big as this clover. And so we would thermal bond that onto, so we didn't use stitching. We would thermal bond that onto the base garment, your sort of polyester, lycra, fruit of the loom type, undergarment wear. And so then we would have the conductive fibers underneath that thermal bonding. So that would carry the signal to a communications module that was affixed on the center of the bra or on the center of the tank top for men. And that would communicate to a mobile app, and it would stream 3 leads of an electrocardiograph. So kind of replacing a standard Holter monitor. And we were really excited about that. We knew basically in the space that we needed to traverse, do we go consumer? Do we go B2B sports? Do we go military? Do we go workers, workman's compensation and readiness alert? Do we go senior living? We kind of decided to go purely healthcare and for clinical diagnosis because we really believed in the capability of the sensor technology giving really clean signals.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann.
And I'm George Everly Jr.
During the COVID-19 epidemic, I stumbled upon an article that Dr. George wrote, which had a real strong impact on me in terms of how COVID was and was likely to impact our social connections, our relationships. And it really, really resonated with me. So I reached out to George, basically wrote him a fan letter, and that began our relationship.
We found a mutual interest in helping people become their best selves, especially in times of adversity.
Together, we embarked on a quest to co-write Lodestar. That journey began with countless hours of researching the most impactful self-help books out there.
Once we had our picks, we combined the science with the practical.
The result of our journey, the creation of a one-stop shop for the best of the best in self-help.
We decided to write this book to help others go from where they are to where they want to be and be the best possible selves they could be.
So if you're looking to boost your career, build stronger relationships, or simply become the best version of yourself, Lodestar is here to guide you on your path.
And unlike an EKG when you go into a doctor's office, you're taking the reading all day. It's not a just point in time, which could be corrupted. It could be anomalies. You're getting a true read as you go along. And where is the data being stored at that time?
The data at the time is being stored in the cloud. So we were collecting it onto the mobile app and kicking it up into the cloud. It was storing there. It was just raw data. We weren't running analytics or anything like that. But your point, Jim, was spot on. It's real world evidence. It's not just when you're in your doctor's office. It's when you're stressed out. It's when you're sleeping. It's when you get up and there might be some exercise. So more real world in the time. And also compared to an EKG monitor, because of all of the billions of touch points, you didn't need to do skin prep. So for someone with my background, for optimal diagnostic yield, I'd have to shave my chest and sand the dense skin down. You don't need to do that. So that's a very interesting aspect of the sensor.
And what else in later iterations? Is it also measuring BP?
Yes. So ultimately, we have now added 8 diagnostic tools to our form factor. We moved away from the tank top and the bra because it's one of those things as a first-time founder and first-time entrepreneur, you have to learn on the job, right? And while we were very excited and romantic about this idea of having undergarments, when we first started talking to health systems and people that might distribute this once we got FDA approval, because we made the choice to go clinical as opposed to consumer. So FDA is a part of the plan that we chose. The health systems and the cardiologists were like, I don't know how many 300-pound, 6'4" men are coming in today. I don't know how many 36 double D bra sizes are coming in tomorrow. And I'm not going to store all of these sizes of inventory. We're not a retail store. And that was kind of the first brick. A first-time founder has to trip over and be like, okay, my product market fit isn't going to happen with a bra and a tank top, right?
It was just a question of inventory management.
Inventory management, exactly. Like, are we going to really know that 60% of our sizes need to be large and XL versus 40%? It would vary from geography to geography. It sounds so obvious now.
Were you planning for single use per patient?
No, we were planning on reusable because the cloth itself is washable. And we have that on file with our first FDA clearance that they wanted to test efficacy after the standard, which is 50 washes. That's the industry standard for. So it was planned to be reusable, and then what morphed into our current product that we just went commercial with 6 months ago, which was 9 years of product development and clinical. We'll talk about all that. Is kind of like a sash. It's a shoulder sash that goes over your right shoulder and across the largest vector of your heart and lungs. We needed to maintain that vector to get all of the metrics that we ultimately wanted to do. So we've added EKGs, obviously, which was the original conception. We added stethoscope functionality, so listening to the continuous sounds of your heart and your lungs. Then we added hemodynamics, so fluid accumulation or fluid driving across the aorta. And then we added actigraphy, movement, and posture, as well as pulmonary features. So impedance-based breathing, so respiration rate that isn't just mechanical, but also electrically based. And then lung volume. So how much is your lung volume change from your baseline? And so we had to bench against that. All of that functionality was in this one shoulder sash, but we had to get approval for reference devices against each of those diagnostic tools that I mentioned. So we had to bench against the stethoscope. We had to bench against the EKG.
The company's called Nanowear, but what's the name of this product?
This product we called Simple Sense. And this was just the device itself, the physical garment. So this was nothing to do with the software and the analytics, which ultimately is what enabled us to add continuous cuffless blood pressure to the device, which I'm sure we'll get to. But that's an AI algorithm. I didn't know we were a data company probably until year 5 of the company, or at least I wasn't articulating it that way.
You joined in 2009?
Late
Yep.
14, and then 15 was kind of our first full year.
And how many people in the company in 15?
15, we were 7 people, including Dr. Vardhan. He was actually on payroll at that time.
How did you finance it?
Yeah, so we got very fortunate. This was there was a company in Sri Lanka, MAS Capital, which is one of the biggest textile producers and distributors for all of the brands we all know, whether that's Nike, Victoria's Secret, what have you. And they were very interested in textile wearables. So they had a corporate venture arm, and they also had a very good relationship with a prominent Silicon Valley venture capital fund based in Palo Alto that was also very interested in the space. Again, the buzz around this time with wearables was very palpable. And so the timing was right. The Sri Lankan company actually was reading my father, Dr. Vardhan's research on this when he was publishing as an academic. So Dr. Vardhan actually was the catalyst to bringing the relationship in. And then the first thing they said, I was still working on Wall Street, and the first thing they said is, we don't like to invest in academics. We love the idea. Is there a CEO in place? And that's kind of a combination of how everything came together. I was working on this with Dr. Vardhan, my father, but then I realized I had to quit the job and, the Wall Street job and dive right in. So we raised $1.5 million later that summer from this venture capital fund and the Sri Lankan corporate venture fund, and brought in a couple high net worth individuals to fill out the remainder of the round. And we basically just took that capital all the way through end of 2016 when we got our first FDA clearance. And that was just with our original 7 people.
And for those who aren't familiar with that process, the FDA approval process is onerous, expensive, it's time-consuming, it's detailed, and it should be rigorous for public protection. But choosing to go that route versus a consumer route was a big decision, and had a real impact in terms of how quickly you could go, how much it would cost you before you had a product in the marketplace. Interesting. So the FDA process, keep us informed as we go through this, how important that was to you at each of these steps. So that's a year in, you have your first FDA approval.
Yeah, I would say almost 2 years. So it was at the end of 2016 that we got it. But we started those discussions very early, and this is before COVID. So being a New York and Pennsylvania company, we were down in DC having face-to-faces with FDA almost as regularly as they would have us. They had never seen cloth nanotechnology before. So it was as much of a collaboration and partnership. But to your point, it takes a very long time. And as an entrepreneur and as a founder, our biggest commodity is time. It's how quickly can we get things. Capital is a derivative of that time, but it's the time that it takes to hit a value inflection milestone. And so we obviously chose to go healthcare because we thought that we would really differentiate and we make the most impact in the world. But also it was a business decision, Jim. Like, we didn't want to jump in the same pool as Apple, right? That was purely on the consumer side. And so we felt like we could carve out our own niche here. And again, this was kind of me learning and making decisions with people that we surrounded ourselves with that could help me sort of understand these processes. But we made it very clear to ourselves that the FDA cannot frustrate us. We chose to be a healthcare company. The FDA is our partner. And we did not complain about that. We embraced it. And I think part of that now, 4 FDA approvals in, we'll be going for 5th and 6th indications here to kind of continue complementing new features of our product. But we feel like we've got a very sort of good cadence of engineer to engineer speaking with FDA. We learned that very early on. We did bring a consultant on to kind of teach us the ropes at the time, but we don't use a consultant anymore. We sort of we really have our engineers and our product people lead the discussion, because that's who your mirrors are at FDA. The people who are evaluating you are engineers, physicians, and clinical, and that so far that's worked out well for us. But to your point, if I told you 9 years to get 4 FDA approvals, I probably would have been naive enough to say we'll do that in half the time when we first started. Mm-hmm. And then there's wrenches that came into play during the time with COVID and stuff like that, where
I read about that.
Yeah, exactly.
So where are you today? Where is Nanowear with its first product today?
So we are that shoulder sash that now has a big sort of data capability, the AI diagnostic for hypertension and continuous cuffless blood pressure. So that's the first indication of its kind in the world. So once we got that, we recently commercialized about 6 months ago, but we also wanted to add some different data streams that we weren't capable of doing. Our thesis has always been it can't just be one metric you're looking at. It has to be a full composite and holistic understanding of how the heart, lungs, metabolic, pulmonary, and hemodynamic systems talk to each other.
But what a trove of data you're delivering to a clinician on a patient of theirs. How many data points are you gathering a day?
If you're wearing for 24 hours, we're over millions of data points, so gigabytes of data on a per patient basis. Now, what we realized is that we sell into the clinical research market and the direct-to-consumer market today, because everything that we have done, combining all of these tools into one product that is for home health, diagnostics, and self-administration, unfortunately, there's no reimbursement codes for that. So we had to kind of be a little bit creative with our business model. And what we realized is that the research market's a $55 billion annual market every year that pharma companies, med tech companies, biotech companies have to pay cash to sort of evaluate safety and efficacy of their products from phase 2 all the way through post-market. And if we could offer our product to really help them understand the safety of their drug and the efficacy of their drug with all of the diagnostic tools, we're saving them a lot of money. We're giving them more data that they can actually use for different contraindications. And then we're really helping them and enroll patients of diversity, right? You can't go through FDA anymore with just doing a trial at Mayo Clinic, for example. You've got to be in rural America. You've got to be in urban America. You've got to be all of the diversity of ethnicity that represents the US and American population. And if we can keep those participants at home, they can enroll faster and improve their dropout rate over 3 to 5 years. And so we just started that with contract research organization partnerships that we are, kicking off as we speak. So that's how we sell today. But eventually we want to move into more sort of, I would say, bigger markets where we can have a bigger impact. So ultimately we would love to get our own code. But before then, because as I'm seeing this convergence of consumerism now, really, really wanting to be on top of their healthcare, the B2B2C and employer-funded premium market, they seem so appealing to me.
Well, when we met, that's what I was thinking about, being in a small, medium-sized business. We're self-insured on healthcare side. We have a lot of people we work with here that we care very much about. And what I would think it would be employers who would want to fund this, to say to their people who that here's an opportunity for you to really be proactive in your own healthcare.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. And we're exploring this with a very big call it B2B2C partner that we have to remain nameless at this point. But if you think about what the cost savings of early detection and preventative care is.
Well, just making the use of an office visit to a cardiologist so much more productive. look, I'm coming in with data. Here's what's happened in my last month on all these different 8 data tracking points. And it's not just at a point in time 3 months ago and again today when the follow-up visit. It's for the last 3 months, or certainly
100%.
a week at a time as we're wearing the device.
There's an assumption we're building into our model right now as we think about our next phase of commercialization. I think it's great that we have these contracts, but we want to understand how we can expand horizontally using the same data services for these applications that you mentioned. If you early diagnose hypertension, sleep apnea, and atrial fibrillation, which we can do, right, through our device. Let's say you do an assessment once or twice a month. That's more than what you're doing in your regular life anyway.
And when you say once or twice a month, is that for a day? Is that for 8 hours? How long would you wear it for that once a month?
Ultimately, we would want this to be continuous over a week or two, right? Our current Gen 1 is just kind of, let's call it a 90-minute diagnostic assessment. You can wear it longer, but 90 minutes is still much better than what you're getting at your cardiologist's office, which is 10 minutes here, 30 seconds of your stethoscope there. But if you were to early diagnose or flag those three conditions, hypertension, sleep apnea, atrial fibrillation, the cost savings of that early detection is almost $15,000 US, right? And that's been published and studied on. And so I know that there's appetite for this, because if you have a healthier...
Explain that $15,000 for us, Venk.
Yeah, so if you think about understanding how our system works right now, if you have undiagnosed hypertension or atrial fibrillation or sleep apnea, which many
your
of
mortality,
us do,
your mortality rate goes way up.
Way up, but also we don't know about this. They call these the silent killer for a reason, right? And we may not know that our hypertension is causing us to have a cold hit us harder for 5 days, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Is that right?
Absolutely. You're more prone to the flu if you have cardiometabolic risk factors. You're more prone to being sicker longer because you have so much inflammation in your body that can't fight off, it's compromising your immune system. So early detection and preventative care, I think, would be paramount if I was running a company.
Is there a biofeedback element? So if I can read the data myself, might I be able to at least consciously influence it or behaviorally influence it?
Absolutely. So the point of what I think products like ours and platforms like ours do is obviously get all of this data that's very clean and very accurate, but that can also be structured, right? You and I aren't going to comb through millions of data points and we're not physicians, right? But you want that data available because that's how you want the raw data to
But you're also going to sell the software that does the data crunching and analysis that gives the clinician, the researcher, the physician, real-time summary data that they can act on.
100%. So if you think about, let's say you were doing an assessment for a week, a month, right? And you understood your blood pressure trending each morning to evening, you probably won't look at the...
Or being impacted at the same meal hour because of something you're eating.
You just nailed it. What is it? What does your cardiometabolic complex look like in the morning when you haven't eaten and you've been fasting for 8 to 10 hours? What does it look after breakfast? What does it look at night before, shortly before you go to bed? All of this structured data is not only important for the physician and the employer, it's extremely important for us to be able to think about behavioral modifications and lifestyle modifications.
Oh, you shouldn't eat that food because blank, 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 blank. And then all of a sudden, yeah, that sounds like it makes sense. And now you're getting a feedback that says, oh my God, my blood sugar really spiked here.
100%. And you brought up a great point. That was very important for us to really generate a partnership with a glucose monitoring company because we were not doing that with our own device. So we obviously established a research-based, CRO-based partnership where the Dexcom G7 continuous glucose monitoring, that data would go through our app and our server. So now you've got continuous glucose alongside continuous blood pressure, alongside continuous EKGs. And the correlations between all of that is where we do data analysis and AI, because that's what makes it individualized to give that feedback loop, not only to us to say, hey, stand up, move around a little bit more. Clearly, did you drink too much last night or did you eat this or what have you? But also our therapeutic recommendations, right?
At Harry and David, we work with our hands as well as our hearts.
so you can enjoy sharing it as much as we enjoy making it. And that's what life's really all about, sharing with those we're closest to, no matter how far we are apart. Harry and David, share more. Wow, exciting stuff, Venk. Now, where are you today? Where are you in the business plan?
Yeah, so we've raised about 20 million, just over 20 million dollars.
That sounds like you've been extremely efficient to me. That you've done all of this FDA process approval on $20 million.
Yes, thank you. We pride ourselves on capital efficiency, as much about discipline, but also about what was available. I'm not saying that we wouldn't have taken a $50 million raise when the interest rates were low, and companies even on an idea were raising tons of money from the technology or software as a service bubble. But we were in a very regulated space. Again, we were not consumer. The business model without reimbursement was a little bit tricky. Home health was kind of a new thing that people weren't able to see pattern recognition. Investors love pattern recognition there. So I think a lot of it was as much of what was available to us, but also being kind of grounded in, do we really want to take a massive raise and then figure out what to spend it on? I think a lot of digital health companies in particular kind of ran into that problem where they raised so much money. Their idea and their promise was so good, they had to spend it. They all of a sudden had 300 people, and there was nothing for a lot of these people to do on a revenue model that was $5 to spend for $1 of revenue, right? And so I think our New York and East Coast and a little bit grounded attitude of businesses are supposed to return a profit. That means we have to be very capital efficient, and we have to sort of understand as employees that our goal is around the success of the company and not giving everyone a $300,000, $400,000 salary. You can work at a big company if that's your goal, right? If your goal is to save lives and to make an impact on the world, this is the discipline we all have to be a part of. And I hope that lasts as long as it can, because I think it's kept us scrappy and it's kept us very nimble in being able to navigate things that I would think bigger companies would probably take twice as long to
do. What's next?
So we're raising a Series B round. I feel like we've been sort of in Series B discussions for some time, but as the goalposts moved, we knew we had to be commercial, so show some commercial traction. What's next for us is doing several different partnerships with companies that will help us get into these new business models. We want to stay horizontal on the technology and data side. We don't want to go vertical with our data platform into a specific therapeutic area. I think, as we have seen, that companies that do that will hit a ceiling and not be able to expand. We think that staying horizontal and staying on the technology side, number one, that's what we're the best at. But number two, we can leverage the sales and marketing channels of all of these companies that know their customers better than us and how to package and deliver the data services that those companies need. So that's what we're raising our Series B round for, raising $15 to $20 million. We hope that that'll be our last round of capital. We think that if we do what we're supposed to do, ultimately we would, when you think about an exit, not to say that we're against going public, we're not afraid of that, but we do think that the best place for our technology is in the hands of a global company.
That has the distribution, that has a manufacturing that you could plug into.
100%. And again, we would be part of that company and we can stay on what we're good at, the technology and data services side. But to your point, it's going to take me years to expand into Europe or into Asia or into the villages in Africa and India, which is part of the altruism we wanted to bring, right? I mean, everybody in India has a smartphone now, even if they're in a village hundreds of miles away from a cardiologist, right? So, if we're going to do that and have that impact on the world, it's got to be with a global company, and I think that's always been our goal. We're really
like
excited.
Everything, you need to dual track and see which is the best for you at a point in time and with a given set of opportunities.
Potentially, and a lot of this too is, it's right place, right timing, right? The market conditions have to be. The IPO market just until 4 weeks ago was kind of closed, right? And the M&A market was just until recently was kind of closed. So Series B investment, particularly
and as a result, a lot of the investing firms were backed up because they hadn't had exits, so they weren't replenishing capital. And that looks like it's starting to right itself now, but it's very early in that
process.
Very early, and again, just getting a term sheet for our Series B from a multinational, that is taking months at this time. And so we're happy. We're very excited to be syndicated. That doesn't mean we've closed yet. Never celebrate until the money's in the bank, right? But I think the market conditions, any politics aside, this administration is so focused on wearables. You saw Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. of HHS, Health and Human Services, saying he expects everybody to have a clinical grade wearable on their bodies in the next 4 years.
The other question it begs, Venk, is what you mentioned the individual in India who's 400 miles away from a cardiologist. That's so interesting to me about how what's the next phase of that. And I know it's not going to be in your company, but how do you plug into where there's? I did a visit to my doctor yesterday by video. It just makes so much sense. It's only the second time I've done it, and when you think about it, saved me. I did it from my office. There was no getting in the car, driving over, no wasting of time on my part, on her part. It was all very good, and she was very nice and very efficient. But it seems to me like all of a sudden, someone who doesn't have a regular cardiologist is getting a report that they should have a cardiologist based on what we're watching on the monitor here in terms of our data collection. And here's the information you need to bring to them, so it's not like they're starting from scratch. How is it working with your dad, Dr. Varadan?
Jim, you're going to make my eyes well up. This has been, he doesn't have a full-time role. I would say he sits on our board of directors and really helps manage our IP portfolio with our founding engineers. But it has been so special to be on this journey with him. I kind of broke his heart when I didn't go to medical school decades ago and then started a company with his technology. And every milestone that we hit, I can just see the pride in his eyes on what we've done. And obviously from a business standpoint, we were never really fighting over equity or anything like that at the beginning because we're family. So it's been great having my father as the co-founder, and I think a lot of the cultural aspects of our company distilled. We're a family in our company, and anybody who joins us, I've said before, I love to collect big brothers and big sisters in the industry who can really teach me. My father's taught me my whole life, right? My parents have taught me my whole life, and we permeate that level of discipline of learning and being a sponge throughout every part of our small organization.
Speaking of people you collect, tell me how you met Dr. Spiro Theodoru.
Yeah, I love this. I love this story. There's so many different chapters if I ever get to the point of writing a memoir, which I'd be so excited about. But Spiro, Dr. Theodora, I met him 3 months into COVID. So as we were in lockdown, we had a Series B term sheet back then. For a very different application, and it was pulled once the world shut down because we didn't know when we could get back into the clinic. And so we really tried to understand that with the changing times, home health is going to be important. And we had to raise some additional capital from both insiders and new investment groups to work through a strategy with FDA to get a new clearance for this approval for this multi-parametric device. And so there was an investment group out of the Middle East and Connecticut. There was a family investment group that had folks on both sides. And I had a relationship with the people in Connecticut, but the real decision makers were their sort of senior partners as well as the partners in the Middle East. And so randomly, Spiro is their healthcare guy. He evaluates any investment that group might look at in healthcare. And so 7 of them were we started using Zooms, it's a normal thing now. And we were having conference calls and Zooms as they were doing diligence, and Spiro was leading all of the diligence for them. He was asking all of the right questions. And we just became sort of family almost overnight from those discussions in that first month. I still didn't really know what our business model was. And I think if you asked him, he probably wouldn't have known either. But he knew that we had something very unique from a data story standpoint, and that yes, the device is the conduit or the collection of devices, whether it's us plus Dexcom plus something else, but there's a unique data story here that machine learning at the time, AI wasn't really the buzzword, but machine learning could really divulge and disseminate to understanding different individualized patterns for risk assessment. And so when Spiro started getting really excited about this, because he was, C-level at a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company, and this was his job at that company. He was the chief medical officer, but headed M&A and ventures. So he was looking at small companies all the time. And I learned so much from him that summer on just how his brain thinks. And, one after another, him being in New York, we just got to become really good friends. And formally, he put in his own money as part of that investment diligence. And, has now joined our board. He's our executive chairman.
That's great.
I love the journey with Spiro.
And I love that he spends a good amount of time in Greece. And I love that his 98-year-old dad is just finishing his most recent book on, of course, longevity.
Yes, absolutely. It's Spiro is just the perfect person in so many ways because his field was kind of consumer-driven med tech, and that's the way the world is going now. I bring him to as many meetings as he's able to do, and he's a big, big fan of my family. He, before I think he even made his investment, he wanted to sit down with my parents and get to meet them. He's just a special guy. He fit our culture so well. And I don't know where we'd be without folks like him, but particularly him.
Yeah. Well, you've met, and we know several people in common who are extraordinary people, not only brilliant and creative, but good people. And that's a common ingredient in the people we get to meet through our Worth events. And so glad I had a chance to meet you and hear your story today. Venk, it's wonderful. We'd like to stay plugged in and follow you and your family on your journey. We wish you success on a personal basis, but on a collective good basis, we surely wish you success, and we'll be rooting for you, and our community will help you in every way we can. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Venk Varadan. He's an entrepreneur, he's a creator, he's an inventor, he's an engaging guy, he's smart, he's high energy. I so enjoyed meeting him in person. I hope you got a nice glimpse of what he's all about and the business he's building. They're making a difference. And if you can do well by doing good, that's a nice path to an enjoyable outcome and a fulfilling life. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Again, I'm Jim McCann. Thanks for joining our podcast today.